I'm Michael Imhotep. IMHOTEP. It's Sunday, March 26, 2023. Welcome to the African History Network show. So in addition to Djimon Hounsou and the article that a lot of people have been commenting on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, where actor Djimon Hounsou, who's in the film Shazam, the new Shazam movie, as well as Furious 7 from the Fast and the Furious franchise, and he's in America and Blood Diamond, and he says he's still struggling to make a dollar in Hollywood. In addition to that story, we'll also talk about another story that we posted on our fan page that people are commenting on, and this deals with actor Johnathan Majors, okay? And this is an incident that was first reported by TMZ, okay? Johnathan Majors arrested in New York City for assaulting woman. His rep says he did nothing wrong. His representative said he did nothing wrong. Okay, so we're going to give you an update on that story, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it's still developing. Okay, and this is not to attack anybody, but we posted about this on our fan page. And so we're going to deal with this story here. We're going to deal with it. The information as accurately as we have it right now. I don't know whether he did do it or didn't do it. His representative says he didn't do it. His attorney says he didn't do it. His attorney says there's evidence to prove that the woman was lying. So we're going to deal with this as best as accurately as we can. And hopefully the allegations are not true. He has had a lot of success this year and last year, and you don't want to see something like this happen to, someone who's worked so hard to get where they are. But on the other hand, if he is guilty of assault, and this goes for anybody, not just a celebrity, not just an African-American man, but anybody, if he is guilty, well, he should pay the consequences like anybody else, but I don't know. So we'll talk about that story. Then there was, let's see, last week on last Sunday's show, we discussed the San Francisco Reparations Task Force and the California Reparations Task Force, right? And we talked about the recommendations. There's 111 recommendations that took place at a meeting last Tuesday before last, which would have been was March 14th. And what got the most attention from the headlines is $5 million per African American in San Francisco. And I told you that's not going to happen at all. And I broke down the math on that for you as well to show you that it's not going to happen. And I shared a segment from Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, where we talked about the California reparations task. Well, we talked about San Francisco and California and reparations in general. And I mentioned the 500-page report that the California Reparations Task Force released that dealt with the harm that African Americans have suffered for the past 150 years. Okay, there's a 28-page executive summary to that 500-page report. Everybody needs to read that 28-page executive summary. I'm going to take you through some of that executive summary because I actually have the report, and I gave you the link last week to the report. Everybody should read the report as well, especially people who are talking about reparations, because unfortunately, a lot of this stuff floating around here on social media, floating around in the media, reparations, a lot of it is just fantasy. It's not going to happen, and unfortunately, most of our people don't understand history. But most Americans don't understand history either, history and law. So we're going to look at the 28-page executive summary. And what I'm going to do is pretty much each week on this show, I want to break down a separate section of this 500-page report, because the report is broken into 12 sections, okay? and they generally speak in 12 sections because they list 12 harms that have happened to African Americans, okay, over the last 150 years. They go through and list 12 harms that have to be fixed. So when we talk about repairing the damage of a legacy of 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining, housing discrimination, discrimination when it comes to employment, education, bank loans, etc., in the medical field, we have to understand what it is that we're talking about. You have to assess what the damage was to understand what needs to be repaired. And you have to analyze the laws and policies that were put in place that inflicted the harm and continue to inflict the harm, so you know what to repair. So we're going to go through and look at the executive summary today. Okay. Also, a story I did not get a chance to get to last week dealt with Newark, New Jersey, and a monument dedicated to Harriet Tubman has replaced a statue of Christopher Columbus in Newark, New Jersey. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then March 26, 1964 is an extremely important date in African American history and in American history. That's the day that Dr. King met Malcolm X. It was at the U.S. Senate debate for the Civil Rights Act in 1964. They only met for a couple of minutes. And we're going to talk some about the day Dr. King met Malcolm X. We'll deal with that as well today on the African History Network show. We'll also give you some information about the online classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. We had some great sessions today and yesterday. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And today I did my class on Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, okay, 1800 to 1968. So we'll give you some information on that as well. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for those classes. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded, and you can go back and watch them anytime. All right. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. All right, the calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. And also, you can sign up for our email newsletter as well. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Okay, I want to go to this first story here before we come up on a break. And this was a story I first saw from Variety.com, and a lot of different news outlets have picked it up. This deals with actor Djimon Hounsou. Djimon Hounsou. So this came out March 17th, 2023. Came out St. Patrick's Day. And we didn't get a chance to talk about it on last week's show. Last week's show was jam-packed because we were dealing with reparations in the California Reparations Task Force. So we didn't get a chance to deal with this story. If we go to this article here from Variety.com, name of the article is Djimon Hounsou is still struggling to make a dollar in Hollywood. Djimon Hounsou is still struggling to make a dollar in Hollywood. He said, I feel tremendously cheated. I feel tremendously cheated. in terms of pay and workload. Now, this is an article by Zach Scharf, Sharf, for Variety.com. Now, Djimon Housou's acting career spans 33 years and includes two Academy Awards, uh, two Academy Award nominations, I should say, for the movies In America and Blood Diamond. In America and Blood Diamond. Action blockbusters like Furious 7 from the Fast and Furious franchise, superhero movies such as Shazam, and collaborations with Steven Spielberg, Amistad, and Ridley Scott, Gladiator. Yet he told The Guardian, publication, theguardian.com, that he still feels tremendously cheated when it comes to Hollywood pay. Show me the money, like they said in Jerry Maguire. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF on Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Stand by. All right, who we have here? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on the broadcast. Okay, back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 1 minute.
I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. You know, we do a lot of different topics here on the After History Network show. We do recurring events and history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, that's without consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, March 26th, 2023, and we are live. Calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. And we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. So give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the damn like button, like Roland Martin says, right? hit the like button. Okay. All right. So right before the break, we were talking about this story dealing with Djimon Hounsou, actor Djimon Hounsou, and this ties into racism when it comes to Hollywood. All right. We first saw him in the Steven Spielberg film Amistad, and he recently did an interview where he talked about how he's underpaid in Hollywood. And we've heard this story from a number of different actors and actresses of African descent. Viola Davis recently as well. She talked about how she's called the Black Meryl Streep. She said, well, if I'm the Black Meryl Streep, pay me like you pay Meryl Streep, because she's talked about how she's underpaid as well. This is an article from Variety.com. Djimon Hounsou is, quote, still struggling to make $1 in Hollywood. I feel tremendously cheated in terms of pay and workload. So the article goes on to say, quote, I'm still struggling to try to make $1. He said, I've come up in the business with some people who are absolutely well off and have very little of my accolades, who are absolutely well off and have very little of my accolades. So I feel tremendously cheated, in terms of finances and in terms of the workload as well. He went on to say, I've gone to studios for meetings and they're like, wow, we felt like you just got off the boat and then went back after Amistad he's referring to. We felt like you just got off the boat and then went back. He said, we didn't know you were here as a true actor. He went on to say, when you hear things like that, you can see that some people's vision of you or what you represent is very limiting. But it is what it is. It's up to me to redeem that. It is what it is, but it's up to me to redeem that. He went on to say, I still have to prove why I need to get paid. He said, they always come at me with a complete low ball. He's quoting them saying, we only have this much for the role, but we love you so much. And we really think you can bring so much. Film after film, it's a struggle. So this is how they try to play a lot of us cheaply in Hollywood. Hey, we love your work. You'd be great for this part. Hey, we only have this much. We only have this much left to pay you. And something that he said earlier in the interview is that he knows other actors and actresses who are well off, who only have a fraction of his accolades. Okay. But he's still being underpaid in white Hollywood. He said, I have yet to meet the film that paid me fairly. I have yet to meet the film that paid me fairly. Now, Djimon Hounsou said Hollywood has overlooked him from the beginning, starting with his breakthrough role as a rebellious enslaved person in Steven Spielberg's Amistad. Despite earning universal acclaim, it was his co-star, Anthony Hopkins, who got the film's sole Oscar nomination. Now, Anthony Hopkins in the movie played John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was the son of John Adams, the second president. John Quincy Adams was the second president of the United States. And after John Quincy Adams was president, once he left the White House, John Quincy Adams was one of the defense attorneys for those African slaves or those Africans who were enslaved on the Amistad slave ship. He was their defense attorney because that case went to the U.S. Supreme Court. So in the classes that I teach, we talk about the United States versus Amistad 1841 U.S. Supreme Court case. That's a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case, and one of the reasons why those Africans won their freedom is because the international transatlantic slave trade was made illegal, and it was outlawed by the U.S. government March 2nd, 1807, when Congress passed the law to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade. It went into effect January 1st, 1808, as stipulated by the U.S. Constitution, because Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution stated that the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be abolished was January 1st, 1808. So the international transatlantic slave trade dealt with bringing Africans into the country to enslave them. Okay. So that was made illegal January 1st, 1808. It was still legal to own slaves in the country, still legal to sell them, but they were trying to cut off that supply of Africans coming into the country. So all of the Africans who were brought in January 1st, 1808 through July of 1860, when the Clotilda came into Alabama, the last known slave ship, all of that is illegal based upon federal law, and there are court cases of white men who were caught trafficking African people into this country, and they're prosecuted. Now, most of them didn't do a lot of time or anything like that. But when you read, when you go to archives.gov, the U.S. National Archives, archives.gov, and you read the case of the Amistad slave ship, those Africans were set free partly because it was illegal for them to be brought into the country in the first place, because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. So that case goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court gives them their freedom. The U.S. Supreme Court also ruled that that when they were captured, it violated all of the international treaties at that time in 1839 when they were captured, because different European nations entered into international treaties to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade. Also, Great Britain did it in 1807. The U.S. enters in 1808 to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade. So, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution lays the foundation for a legal argument, one of the legal arguments for reparations. And we see it played out in the movie Amistad, starring Djimon Hounsou. But since most of our people don't understand history or law, we don't even know what they're showing us in the movie. And that's based upon the Constitution. They're laying the foundation for a legal argument for reparations. But we saw the movie, but don't understand the history behind what it is that we saw. So if we go back to this article here, and I'll pull up the information from archives.gov, because the Amistad case, we deal with this in the class. You have to understand that landmark U.S. Supreme Court case, okay, which ties into slavery, and there were abolitionists who helped raise money for these Africans to go back to Sierra Leone, because the U.S. Supreme Court gave them their freedom, but the U.S. wasn't going to pay for them to go back to Africa. All right, which is, okay, that's how you're going to do it. So it was abolitionists who raised money to send them back. All right, so if we go back to the article here from Variety.com, so Djimon Hounsou said Hollywood has overlooked him from the beginning, starting with his breakthrough role as a rebellious enslaved person. He played Joseph Senku in Steven Spielberg's Amistad. Despite earning universal acclaim, it was his co-star Anthony Hopkins portraying John Quincy Adams, former president of the United States, who got the film's only Oscar nomination. With 2016's Blood Diamond, the Academy nominated Djimon Hounsou for supporting actor, and his co-star Leonardo DiCaprio for lead actor was nominated, despite the film equally focusing on Djimon Hounsou's character. Djimon Hounsou told TheGuardian.com, he said, "I felt seriously cheated." He said, "Today we talk so much about the Oscars being so white," and yes, they still are white. You can just tell by the last Oscars. Yes, the Oscars are still so white. But he said, I remember there was a time where I had no support at all. I remember there was a time where I had no support at all. No support from my own people, no support from the media, from the industry itself. Okay. And we're going to continue this on the other side of the break. And here's his own words here from the article from variety.com. He said, it felt like you should be happy that you've got nominated, and that's that. Okay, we'll continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Give us a call, 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Okay, share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. How's everybody doing today? All right, back from break in 4 minutes. All right, stand by. We'll continue with Djimon Hounsou. Then we'll talk about Johnathan Majors. Then we'll go to, what's the next story we're going to? Then we'll go to the story dealing with California Reparations Task Force, the 500-page report. We'll look at the executive summary. Then we'll talk about Harriet Tubman. And then the day Dr. King met Malcolm X, March 26, 1964. Stand by. Okay, so we have people watching on YouTube, Sherwin and Joya. Just a few of the people watching. We have people watching on Facebook. And I've got to send out this email blast. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by.
Much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, that's without consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. Okay, the calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. And so lines are wide open, so don't wait till the last 10 minutes of the show to call in, everybody. I'm just telling you right now. Okay, so let's go back to this story we were talking about at the top of the hour. And this is dealing with actor Djimon Hounsou. It's a good article from Variety.com. Djimon Hounsou is still struggling to make $1 in Hollywood. I feel tremendously cheated in terms of pay and workload. Okay, so we know he's in the new Shazam movie as well. Maybe I'll get to the movies to see Shazam. I don't know. I still haven't seen Creed 3. I guess I should see Creed 3 first. So I'll go see Creed 3 first and then go see Shazam. Guess that's how I'll do it. Maybe I'll see them both in the same day to save a trip to the theater. Do it like that. So Djimon Hounsou is now back in theaters as a wizard in Warner Brothers Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Well, you know what? Since Megan Good is in Shazam, maybe I'll go see Shazam first, you know, because it's I know the women want to go see two half-naked men, you know, fight each other in Creed 3. But I think I may go see Megan Good in Shazam now that I think of it, because I follow her on Instagram. So I've seen some of her pictures from Shazam. I think I'm gonna go see Shazam next weekend. Okay, so all right, Djimon Hounsou is now back in theaters as a wizard in Warner Brothers Shazam: Fury of the Gods. It's a supporting role that has been greatly expanded compared to the limited screen time he got in the first Shazam movie. He said, out of them all, the DC universe has a level of respect. There wasn't much to the role at first, and I did it, and it was fun. But the second time around, it was a little more respectful. Okay, we're going to continue with this. We'll go into the phone lines here in just a minute also. So stand by. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. So he said, from time to time, Hollywood themselves make the point of saying, quote, we should give him more. He's a little underappreciated, end quote. He said, I think they recognize that themselves. He went on to say, hey, it's the struggle I have to overcome. Okay, now Shazam: Fury of Gods is they wrap up and say Shazam: Fury of Gods is now playing in theaters. Okay, so yeah, check that out. And Creed 3 as well. I think I'm gonna see Shazam first though, because Megan Good is in Shazam. I'll go back and see the two brothers beat up each other. I'll go see that after I see Shazam. Now, I talked about the in the previous segment. I mentioned the Amistad case of 1841, U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841. And this was the United States versus the Amistad. Okay. If you go to archives.gov, because it's important to understand history. And I know so many people are talking about reparations now. Unfortunately, most of what they're saying about reparations is false, not legal, comes from a misunderstanding of history, misunderstanding of law, and is a lot of it's a bunch of fantasy that's not going to happen. Okay, so if you go to archives.gov, U.S. National Archives, and search for the Amistad, okay, it comes up with this information here, and they have some of the original court documents from the case, the U.S. Supreme Court case, that you can read. It says in February 1839, Portuguese slave hunters abducted a large group of Africans from Sierra Leone and shipped them to Havana, Cuba, which was a center for the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, this abduction, now right here, this is extremely important. This deals with international law. This abduction violated all of the treaties then in existence. It was a violation of international law. 2 Spanish plantation owners, Pedro Montes and Jose Ruiz, purchased 53 Africans and put them aboard the Cuban schooner called the Amistad to ship them to a Caribbean plantation. On July 1st, 1839, the Africans seized the ship because there was a mutiny on the ship, and they were well within their right to fight for their freedom because it was illegal for them to be captured in the first place. Let's click here, read more. Let's go to this here. Let's see. Okay, additional background information. Okay, so when we look at this here, hold on, what I want. All right. Let me go back. Okay, they killed the captain and the cook and ordered Montez and Ruiz to sail to Africa. All right. So you click on the link for read more, gives additional background information. I want to skip forward and I want to go to what the end result was. Okay, so they talk about the trial in the U.S. Supreme Court. The Africans were represented by former U.S. President and descendant of American revolutionaries, John Quincy Adams, who was the 6th president of the United States. And the Supreme Court decided in favor of the Africans, stating that they were free individuals, kidnapped and transported illegally. They had never been slaves. Kidnapped and transported illegally. They had never been slaves. Senior Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story wrote and read the decision. He said, quote, "It was the ultimate right of all human beings in extreme cases to resist oppression and to apply force against ruinous injustice," end quote. The opinion asserted the Africans' right to resist, quote unquote, unlawful slavery. The opinion asserted the Africans' right to resist, quote unquote, unlawful slavery. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the immediate release of the Amistad Africans. 35 of the survivors were returned to their home in Sierra Leone. The others died at sea or in prison while awaiting trial. Okay, so check out this piece of history from the U.S. National Archives, and they have some of the original court documents here, related primary sources. Okay, this is at archives.gov. Just search for Amistad or the Amistad case. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to line 1. Let's go to Bruce. Line 1. Hey, Bruce, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from. All right, how are you?
I'm calling from Detroit. How you doing, brother Mike?
I'm all right. How are you?
Okay. You know, I saw Amistad. I thoroughly enjoyed it because it's one of my favorites, because usually in movies, black people always take L's unless it's a black movie and we may have a black savior. My only disappointment is it's not with the white folks, because if we don't know who they are by this day and time, we'll never know. And I'm not going to play the numbers game. We're not all are bad. I look at where we at as what I'm looking at as us as a people and our progress. I'm not trying to handpick individuals.
Okay.
And so I think that we should now try that we have enough money to take control over our own destiny. Now, we do know that, hey, you want to be accepted by the larger society, well, good luck. But we still can have success and accolades, but we just have to focus inward instead of outward. You can't go to your oppressor to be your savior. And as far as San Francisco, I agree with you. San Francisco, I think that it may be too much for San Francisco to bear. Although I do think that
it's way too much for San Francisco to bear.
That's old.
Well, Bruce.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Bruce, can you hear me? Okay, we'll come back to Bruce on the other side of the break. Is way too much for San Francisco to bear. When we come back from the break, we'll go back to Bruce. We'll go back to the phone lines, and then we'll talk about Johnathan Majors. And I'm gonna show you the math dealing with San Francisco and what it would mean if 5 million African Americans, if 20,000 African Americans got $5 million out of 50,000 in San Francisco. That's not going to happen. If you live in San Francisco, no sense of going to the mailbox looking for your reparations check. It ain't going to happen. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Okay, coming back from the break, we'll talk about Johnathan Majors. You all go research the Amistad case, and if you're in my online classes, you know we talk about the Amistad case in the classes because that deals with law. And we're going to talk about reparations. We need to understand law and history. If you're seeking a legal remedy to a historical problem, you must understand law and history. Oh, also this other piece from dealing with Djimon Hounsou. I want to get to this as well. This is a story dealing with Shazam. We'll talk about that also. All right, stand by, everybody. Back from break in 3 minutes. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. If you're on YouTube, if you send it to us through Cash App or PayPal, we get it immediately. When you do it through YouTube, they only pay out like once a month. All right, stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Okay, back from break in 2 minutes.
The opinions and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael in Hotel. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We do recurring events and history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, that's without consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. All right, you can support us also a few ways. $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. And we have the information right on the homepage of our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. Official website is $, official Cash App tag is $, the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there, most likely. Click right here on the link. It takes you to our QR code as well. That way you know it's going to us, because there's some fake African History Network Cash App accounts out there that have been stealing money from us, and I'm still trying to get them shut down. Also, we have the information about the online classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays right here on the homepage of our website as well. So our next classes will be Saturday, April 1st and Sunday, April 2nd, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. For more information. It also connects you to our social media platforms as well. Okay, I want to go back to, let's go back to very quickly, Bruce. Let him finish up. Bruce, go ahead and finish with your comment, because I got to get to this other story.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, go ahead.
When saying that San Francisco can't carry the load, by no means for me, I don't think there's any excuse or pass that needs to be given, because there is still a debt owed. And so that's why I think that
San
the
Francisco
federal government should lead.
So San Francisco.
That's why I think the federal government.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Let me just ask a question. San Francisco owes a debt for what?
A debt for reparations for slavery. I'm saying that you to me, it should be headed by the federal government instead of piecemealing it state by state. Now, I think the states can assist on a micro level, but there's still a debt owed to Black people. So we're not saying that it comes from San Francisco per se, but I don't think that we should excuse that and give that a pass. Where there's a will, there's a way. There has been a violation done to Black people, and I don't think we're saying that there's no money that's an excuse, because just like with mortgages, there's very few people that could cash out a house, but they came up with such a plan as a mortgage and financing to them to meet their obligation. So I don't think that
who came up with that? Was that San Francisco or the federal government?
On micro level with San Francisco.
Bruce, who came up with that? Was that San Francisco or the federal government?
You know what? To be honest with you, I have no idea. I don't know.
That was the federal government.
Was with
that was the federal government. Okay, now Bruce, let me ask you a quick question. Did you see the interview that I did on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, dealing with reparations, March 16th?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Have you read any of the, like, say, the executive summary of the California Reparations Task Force report? Have you read any of that? Just curious.
No, because I'm not that closely connected with California. But what I'm saying is, there's no excuse for not getting it.
Bruce,
none.
Listen,
now,
Bruce,
how you
Bruce,
structure it is different than
Bruce,
what they're saying.
Listen to me. It's online. It's online. I'm getting ready to go over it in a minute. It's free. It's online. Did you know that San Francisco does not have it?
There ain't nothing wrong with pulling my coat. I'm just telling you straight up that I haven't looked at it.
Okay,
it doesn't mean that I don't have an opinion on reparations. I think every Black person should.
Bruce, did you know that San Francisco does not have a history of slavery?
It doesn't have nothing with who if they have a history, who lives there. Every place that we go, somebody has probably, if they're foundational Black Americans, have been impacted by slavery. So when you reside, now you may not hold San Francisco accountable. That's why I say it comes from the federal government. And once
federal government, yes. But here's what we have to understand. A city is going to repair the damage that the city is responsible for doing. A city, generally speaking, is not going to repair the damage that the federal government did or the state. A city is going to repair the damage.
They're not required to. That's why I'm saying the federal government. They're not required to where you reside. If I move to San Francisco, I still think that I owe reparations.
So let's look at this. Okay, keep listening, because I'm going to go over this information. Take notes, Bruce. Keep listening. Thanks for calling.
Mike.
All right, thanks for calling. All right, so let's look at this very briefly here. I showed this last week. I can't stress enough. If we're gonna talk about reparations, it's important for us to understand what we're talking about. Yes, San Francisco has a rampant history of racism, segregation, housing discrimination, etc., redlining, things like this, just like California. Okay, California came into the Union as a free state in 1850. So to talk about reparations for slavery for in California is a misunderstanding of history. Now they have identified about 1,500 people who were in like a semi-slave status or so in 1850 and afterwards. Keep in mind, chattel slavery ended in 1865 when Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment, December 6, 1865. So if California had a history of slavery, it'd be 15 years basically. Okay. But they have a history. California has a history of sundown towns, housing discrimination, school segregation. Yes, California passed the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850. After the Fugitive Slave Act, the second Fugitive Slave Act was passed in 1850, which was part of that compromise of 1850, which brought California into the Union in the first place as a free state in 1850. So I broke down this math last week because unfortunately a lot of our people have passion, but we don't understand math, even though we invented math. So San Francisco has a population of approximately 50,000 African Americans. One of the stipulations for reparations that are going to be given out in San Francisco, and they haven't come to a conclusion of what is going to happen. 111 recommendations were given, but people have to be 18 years or older, have identified as African American on official documents for like the last 10 years, something like that. But if 20,000 African Americans in San Francisco receive $5 million each, that's $100 billion. That's $100 billion. San Francisco's annual budget is $14 billion, which means the amount of money that San Francisco has to run the government, the city government, pay the people, pay police, fire department, take care of all the city services, all that is $14 billion. San Francisco is facing a $728 million budget deficit over the next 2 years. As I said last week and this week and next week and the week after that, this is totally unrealistic. It's not going to happen. That's $100 billion is 7 times the annual budget of San Francisco. Don't wait for your reparations check in the mail from San Francisco. If only 10,000 African Americans out of 50,000 got it, that'd be $50 billion. That's 4 times the annual budget. That's not going to happen, period. Okay. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. We'll go back to this other story there with Djimon Hounsou. Then we'll talk about Johnathan Majors. Then we'll go through and look at the executive summary from the California Reparations Task Force, which breaks down history. Because if we're seeking a legal remedy to a historical problem, that implies we need to understand both law and history. I'm a researcher. I deal with facts and evidence. I don't deal with opinions and belief. Proper documentations end all conversation. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. List to the African History Network show on Michael M. Hotep, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF, 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Okay, back from break in 4 minutes. All right, stand by. Okay, you say bless. Okay. Okay. All right, we've got Sharon, we've got Sherwin, Sunflowers. Here's the information so you can register for the online classes that I teach. So Sundays we do ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade. Next class will be Saturday, April 1st. If you missed the class that I did this weekend, as soon as you register, you can watch it because it's archived. Back from break in 3 minutes. We're going to get to this story here dealing with Shazam, Djimon Hounsou. He said that he opens up to Kelly Clarkson why it's so important to play a superhero. I just want to hit that for just a minute. Then we'll get to Johnathan Majors. Y'all can post your comments about Johnathan Majors as well. Okay, you should be able to hear us really well. You should be able to see me well. The broadcast should be smooth because I had to upgrade the laptop. I didn't want to have to spend the money to do it, but I had to. The old laptop that I had was only 3 years old, but it was not designed to broadcast. So I had to upgrade to this laptop. This thing cost $700. I did not want to have to spend the money, but the direction I'm trying to take things, I had to make the investment. Okay, so we'll go to the story here from TMZ. Then we'll look at this the story from there's one from TMZ. There's one from Variety on Johnathan Majors. Okay, and updated information. We'll do that. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. We'll go to back to the phone lines also. Calling numbers 313-778-7600.
Right. 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. We've got the topics, the guests, the opinions, and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael in Hotel. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the After History Network show. We do recurring events and histories and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, that's just our consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right. Yeah, I tried to tell you elections had consequences. It was about 7,000 votes that made the difference between Republicans, the coup plotters, controlling the House of Representatives, and Democrats controlling the House of Representatives. I tried to tell people didn't want to listen. Now you got the coup plotters in control. And then you got people saying we want reparations. No Republicans, that 222 Republicans in the I think it's 222 in the House of Representatives. No Republicans in the House of Representatives support reparations. Not even the 4 Negroes in the House of Representatives that are Republicans. They don't even support reparations. So how are you going to get a reparations bill passed in the House? I don't even understand that. It takes 218 votes to get a bill passed in the House of Representatives. At least when Democrats were in control, you had 217 that signed on the HR. Well, Congress.gov said 196. Dr. Julian Malveaux said 217. But even if it was 196, it's 196 more than you have now. No Republican, it's 196 more that supported it. And with Republicans, no Republicans support reparations. So I don't know how you're gonna get a reparations bill passed. Not the way that people trying to go about it now. That it ain't gonna happen. And if you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, how do you get a bill passed to pay reparations at the federal level? But we'll talk about that in a minute here. Okay. See, I'm a realist. I don't play games. As anybody that knows me, I don't play games. I'm real straightforward. Let's lay out the plan, execute the plan. This is how we do it. We don't deal with fairy tales. When I'm not playing games with people. I'm not trying to make you think you're going to get a check in the mail that's not going to come. Okay. Dr. King, August 28th, 1963, he talked about a check mark insufficient funds. Okay. All right. So I want to go to this article here. This is dealing with Djimon Hounsou talking about his role in Shazam. This came out March 22nd, 2023. Shazam star Djimon Hounsou opens up to Kelly Clarkson about why it was so important he play a superhero. Why it was so important he play a superhero. And, I like to see African Americans play superheroes. I don't go see movies about slavery in the theater. I have to watch that on cable or something like that, because I got to watch it maybe in 15-20 minute increments, because it's like very traumatizing for me. The last thing I'm telling you right now, and people know me, know I don't go see movies in the theater about slavery. I can't. You watching that on the big screen and you in surround sound, the last thing that you want to do is have me go to a movie that's about slavery, because it ain't gonna turn out too well. I'm telling you right now, it's not gonna turn out too well. All right. Now, I'm not saying don't go support it, anything like that. You don't want me to go see a movie about slavery. Okay, so it's not. I'm telling you now, you'll see me on the 11 o'clock news. Okay, it's not going to turn out too well. Djimon Hounsou is part of a distinguished group of actors who have made appearances in not one but two major superhero universes over the course of his career. This month, he makes his return to the DC comic universe as the Wizard in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. But he's also spent a good chunk of time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as the Kree warrior Karath the Pursuer, appearing in both Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain Marvel. I wasn't a big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy. I watched it, but it's okay. And I saw Captain Marvel also, because Captain Marvel was pretty good, I guess. There's a financial benefit to landing those roles, of course, and playing in a superhero sandbox is a particular kind of fun. But according to Djimon Hounsou, it's also important to him as a father. It's also important to him as a father, and not just because his kids think superheroes are cool. Okay, so he was on the Kelly Clarkson show last week, discussing this topic, because they're going around doing the interviews on in media promoting Shazam! Fury of the Gods. And I have to look and see out to Google to see if Megan Good has done any interviews, because that's who I want to see doing. I want to see Djimon Hounsou do interviews. We support the brother, but I want to see Megan Good do interviews also. Okay, so appearing on the Kelly Clarkson show to discuss his return in Fury of the Gods, Djimon Hounsou explained that his son grew up loving superheroes, particularly animated versions of characters like Spider-Man. That was fine until one day his son said that he wished he were white. That was fine until one day his son said he wished he was white. So he could climb walls like the cartoon web slinger Spider-Man he loved watching. Djimon Hounsou said, quote, "For him, over time, the understanding is we don't have the ability to climb walls like Spider-Man. And so I was eager to look for some content online that could redeem that." Now, in his search for more superhero content that could help his child understand that he was also represented in the comic book world, Djimon Hounsou remembered that he himself had already played a superhero, having done voiceover work as T'Challa for the 2010 Marvel Knights Black Panther animated series, the 2010 Marvel Knights Black Panther animated series. So he pulled up clips from that project and showed them to his son. He heard the voice and he's like, "Baba, is that you?" So that's one of the reasons I was really drawn to superhero projects, Djimon Hounsou said. So Djimon Hounsou ended up working in both Guardians of the Galaxy and Shazam, lending his screen presence to two superhero universes, and in the case of Shazam, joining a franchise in which characters from many different backgrounds are able to wield superpowers thanks to the wizard's shared power. And Megan Good portrays a superhero, which makes sense because you have black girl magic. Okay, so that makes sense that she portrays a superhero. So that's something really positive there. And we see the impact on children as well. Now, there's a study that I cite, and we talk about this in a lot of my lectures. I've dealt with this over the years. Uh, there's a study from blackamericaweb.com had this article, and I have to pull up the slide dealing with this, but it deals with how the self-esteem of African American boys is damaged by watching television. The self-esteem of African American boys is damaged by watching television, and it comes from negative stereotypical images of African Americans that we see, and that's contrasted with images of white people that we see doing all types of fantastic things, saving the world, being intelligent, being scientists, being doctors, all different types of things like this, right? So I'm trying to let's see which article, where is that study here? Let me try to find that slide. That is okay. I'll have to come back to that. I have to find that during the break. And that was okay. I'll find it. But it deals with there's also a study from Michigan State University that shows that the positive impact that socializing our children when it comes to like African American history, the impact that socializing our children into that reality has on them also. I gotta find that. Okay, this right here. Let's see. It is TV kills black boys' self-esteem. Let's go to this slide here. This is slide 67 out of 170. I have so many presentations. Let's look at this one here. So this was an article from blackamericaweb.com. CNN.com also talked about this study when it came out. TV kills black boys' self-esteem. This is from June 14th, 2012, blackamericaweb.com. A new, precise, and exhaustive year-long study finds that watching television regularly distorts and ultimately destroys the self-esteem of young black males who often find themselves comparing one another to the characters they view on air, leaving them feeling trapped as if there are, quote, very few positive life paths they can aspire to, end quote. Let's see. And okay, so that was dealing with black boy self-esteem. Read that article from blackamericaweb.com. There's also one from CNN.com. Now, in the study, they talk about the only people, when it came to children, the only people whose self-esteem was boosted by watching television were white boys, because they see themselves saving the world. They talk about the negative impact for African-American boys, girls, and to a large extent, white girls. For white, now, when CNN ran their story on this, they showed a little white boy laying on the floor on the carpet watching TV, and he had a cape on like Superman. And they talked about how it was only white boys whose self-esteem was boosted by watching television. Okay, so check that study out. Now, this other another study. Now, this one was from, which one is this one from? Is this from Michigan State? This is the one that Harvard University and Pittsburgh University did. University of Pittsburgh. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. Now, this was an article from January 1st, 2013 from AfricanGlobe.net. Numerous outlets carried this story. African-American teenagers perform better academically when their parents instill in them a sense of racial pride. A new study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard, Harvard, Harvard University, shows that when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. Oh, you mean like learning about African American history in school or taking the advanced placement African American studies course? You mean like that? You mean like what the state of Florida is banning? You mean things like that positively impact the self-esteem of African American children and help them do better in school? Harvard University knows this. Harvard University knows this. Why isn't Harvard University putting that information out now, fighting against these anti-critical race theory laws? They've done the research. We'll be back in a few minutes. They're playing my theme song, I've Got the Power, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF. Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. We're going to Johnathan Majors here. Next. Where we at the 15? Okay, back from break in 3 minutes. Back from break in 3 minutes. Hold on, let me get a picture of okay, back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 1 minute. Okay, so that's Megan Good from Shazam, Fury of the Gods, a new Shazam movie. Okay, so we'll be back from break in 1 minute.
The opinions and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the After History Network Show. We do with current events of history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on.
This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy to electrify consequences.
Catch it all right here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. All right. So this is a picture of Megan Good in the new Shazam movie. Okay, so just in case you haven't seen any pictures of it, of her, she plays a superhero in the movie. So Johnathan Majors is back in the news, and we're going to spend a little time on this. I ain't going to spend a whole lot of time on this story. So the first story that broke on this probably was from TMZ on Saturday, March 25th. And there have been numerous updates, and newsone.com just has an update that I just posted on my personal Facebook page, Michael Imhotep. We'll talk about that as well. Johnathan Majors arrested in New York City for assaulting woman. His representative says he's done nothing wrong. His attorney says, and the exact quote from his attorney is, let's see, his attorney says he's completely innocent of the alleged assault. Okay. So if we look at the article here from TMZ, it says Johnathan Majors was arrested in New York City this weekend, and according to police, he's been accused of putting his hands on a woman, but Johnathan Majors' team is calling BS, saying it's not true. Law enforcement sources tell us the actor was booked Saturday morning, which would be March 25th, 2023, on charges of strangulation, assault, and harassment. On charges of strangulation, assault, and harassment. We're told police responded to a call for service around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time near the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. We're told the alleged victim in the case, a female, relayed to police that Johnathan Majors had gotten into a dispute with her and proceeded to attack her. Their exact relationship is unknown. This is what they're saying now. Some sources are saying it was a girlfriend or something like that. His girlfriend, a girlfriend, what have you. We'll find out. Our sources tell us, according to TMZ, our sources tell us the alleged victim has visible injuries, including a laceration behind her ear, redness, and marks to her face. She was taken to an area hospital and is in stable condition. As for Johnathan Majors, he was handcuffed and taken to jail on the spot, as police felt there was enough evidence for probable cause. We're hearing he is currently out of custody. Now, Johnathan Majors is a huge celebrity these days. He's been in everything from Marvel's latest Ant-Man movie to Michael B. Jordan's Creed 3 and other blockbusters, as well as over the past couple of years. He's received rave reviews for his performances and is seen as a rising star. He was even at the Oscars a few weeks ago, and among the many presenters, he presented an award along with Michael B. Jordan. A rep for Johnathan Majors tells TMZ, quote, he's done nothing wrong. We look forward to clearing his name and clearing this up. Okay. And let me show this here. And we're going to go to the updates in this story also. So we're going to start at the beginning in the reporting and deal with the updates in the story. A rep for Johnathan Majors tells TMZ he's done nothing wrong. We look forward to clearing his name and clearing this up. Okay. So then we look at the updates in the name of this article, Johnathan Majors arrested in New York City for assaulting woman. Rep, he's done nothing wrong. Okay. This is from March 25th, 2023. So 4:44 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Sunday, and that would be, so this was last updated, to be Saturday, March 25th. Here's what allegedly happened in the lead up to this. Per our law enforcement sources, police were told that the alleged victim is Johnathan Majors' girlfriend. Okay, police were told the alleged victim is Johnathan Majors' girlfriend. And according to her, they got into an argument while in a taxi returning home from a bar in Brooklyn. Our sources say police were told the girlfriend saw another woman texting Johnathan Majors, and she confronted him, trying to sneak a peek at his phone. We're told the alleged victim girlfriend claims that Johnathan Majors got mad and that he allegedly grabbed her hand and allegedly slapped her. were also told the alleged victim claims he put his hands around her neck during this incident. Our sources say the woman was dropped off somewhere and that Johnathan Majors spent the night elsewhere. It appears the girlfriend went to police the following morning, which had been Saturday morning, March 25th, and reported the crime. Okay. So then they have an update from 5:03 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which would be March 26, 5:03 a.m. A judge released Johnathan Majors without bail at his Saturday night arraignment in Manhattan Criminal Court. Prosecutors charged the actor with misdemeanor assault, aggravated harassment, attempted assault, and harassment. Johnathan Majors is due back in court in May. Okay, so hopefully this hopefully these charges are not true. Now, there's a updated article also from Variety.com. Johnathan Majors' lawyer, let me go to this piece here from Variety. Johnathan Majors' lawyer says evidence exists to prove he's, quote, completely innocent, end quote, of alleged assault. His attorney says he's completely innocent of alleged assault. This is a piece by Rebecca Rubin for Variety.com, March 26, 2023. Okay, now the let's see here. Let's go back to this. Okay, so the defense attorney for Johnathan Majors says the actor is completely innocent and provably the victim, quote unquote, provably the victim, after he was arrested on Saturday in Manhattan and charged with assault and harassment in what New York Police Department described as a domestic dispute. His defense attorney, Priya Chaudhry, Chaudhry, said Johnathan Majors is completely innocent and is provably the victim of an altercation with a woman he knows. We are quickly gathering and presenting evidence to the district attorney with the expectation that all charges will be dropped imminently. End quote. Now, Priya Chaudhry goes on to say there is video footage from the vehicle where the alleged incident took place. Okay. There is video footage from the vehicle where the alleged incident took place, witness testimony from the driver and onlookers, and two written statements from the woman recanting the allegations. Quote, all the evidence proves that Mr. Majors is entirely innocent and did not assault her whatsoever. Unfortunately, this incident came about because this woman was having an emotional crisis for which she was taken to a hospital yesterday. The NYPD is required to make an arrest in these situations, and this is the only reason Mr. Majors was arrested. We expect these charges to be dropped soon. So hopefully all that is true. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying hopefully, this works out and he didn't assault her, and that hopefully, like I said, hopefully that's not the case. But generally speaking, if it is the case, and with anybody, male or female, okay, if they do assault, then they should be held accountable. If he's totally innocent, then he should be totally exonerated. All the evidence should come out and prove that he's totally innocent. Now, attorney Priya Chaudhry's statement provides additional information about the incident. Police in New York said they responded to a 911 call at a Chelsea apartment. Johnathan Majors, who is 33 years old, was taken into custody without incident on Saturday night. The unnamed victim, a 30-year-old woman, was taken to the hospital after with, quote, minor injuries to her head and neck, end quote, according to authorities. The police statement listed strangulation, assault, and harassment as potential charges, but he was ultimately charged with 2 counts of assault in the 3rd degree, attempted assault in the 3rd degree, aggravated harassment in the 2nd degree, and harassment in the 2nd degree, each of which are misdemeanors or lesser charges. A representative for Johnathan Majors denied the allegations. Quote, he's done nothing wrong. End quote, his publicist told Variety, we look forward to clearing his name and clearing this up. We look forward to clearing his name and clearing this up. So once again, hopefully all this gets cleared up. And if the woman made false accusations against Johnathan Majors, she should come out and apologize. Now, they may not show her face, but we know who he is. We see his face everywhere. So she should have to come out and apologize also. If she wants to do it anonymously, okay. But I would say, because you publicly put his name out there, then you should have to come out and publicly apologize and put your name out there. If you made false police statements and things like this, and I understand she was having a emotional crisis or what have you, but when you have someone, regardless of race, regardless of sex, it could be a man making false accusations of a woman, it could be a woman making false accusations of a man. When you have, especially a celebrity, and you make false accusations, their face is out there, their name is out there, articles are being written. So if it's proven that you lied, then your name should be out there and your face should be out there also. I'm just saying. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. All right, back from break in 4 minutes. Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Who still needs to register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays? If you missed our class this past Saturday, visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can go back and watch it. Our next class is Saturday, April 1st. Saturday, April 1st, 2023, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa understand the transatlantic slave trade. As soon as you register, you can watch the previous classes, okay? All right, stand by. Back from break in 3 minutes. Calling numbers 313-778-7600.
Views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. We got the topics, the guests, the opinions, and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We do with current events of history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on.
This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy so elections have consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. Okay, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. All right, calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right, I want to go back to a topic that we talked about. I want to go back to a topic that we talked about last Sunday, and this deals with the California Reparations Task Force and the San Francisco Reparations Task Force also. Okay, Doug, we're going to clip number 1. And I was on, we're going to go through the executive summary of the California Reparations Task Force. Here's a 28-page executive summary out of their 500-page document. Okay, and it's right here. This is the executive summary. And I'm going to give you the link also, the information where you can actually read the full report. It's free to read. It's free to read it. Okay. This is the executive summary here. And the report lays out 12 harms that have happened to African Americans in California, but throughout the country also. And there was I got to find the piece that shows the if you just Google California Reparations Task Force also, it'll come up, but I'll give you the actual link so you can download this. But I want to go to this clip. So I was on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, on Thursday, March 16th. Suzette Speaks was sitting in for Faraji, and we were talking about San Francisco Reparations Task Force as well as California. Okay, let's go to this clip.
Replay, go ahead and leave your comment below, like, and share this video. So let's start with Karen. Karen Canera, I saw your comment, sis. Thank you again for being a part of the Culture Crew today. She said there wasn't slavery in California, and I think you said that too, Michael. There was and is racism. The return of Bruce's Beach, and I love the Bruce's Beach example, great grandson was the best example of reparations so far. He sold it back for $20 million. Do you want to make any kind of comparison there?
Well, when you read the articles dealing with the California Reparations Task Force, one of the things they talk about repairing the damage of is the theft of land, like with Bruce's Beach. Okay, and then in the San Francisco area, you have the Fillmore district. Okay, which was a district that was wiped out by expressways, and they had a lot of African American homes. It was in the 1960s. So there's a good article from the Washington Post on February 27, 2023. San Francisco debates reparations $5 million each for Black residents. Okay, and they talk about the Fillmore district in the 1960s was demolished, and this was a neighborhood once known as the Harlem of the West, and it displaced 883 businesses and about 20,000 people, most of them African American. Okay, so California has a history of this, but we see this across the country. So when we talk about repairing the damage, not just of 246 years of slavery, okay, but decades of housing discrimination, theft of land, racism, voter suppression, etc. Okay, so this is why you have to understand the laws and policies that were put in place that inflicted the harm, to understand the laws and policies that need to be put in place to repair the damage that was done.
Understood, brother. We're going to stay with our audience and viewers. Let's go to another comment. Chris Big, I saw this comment stand out. You wrote, thank you, sir, Compensated Emancipation Act paid reparations to slavery owners at $300 per slave.
That was only in Washington, D.C. That was the compensated. Okay. This is the mistake people make. That was the Compensated Emancipation Act of April 16th, 1862, which was sponsored by a senator who was an abolitionist. It was passed by Congress, signed into law by President Abraham Lincoln, and it was about something like 2,900 petitions by slave owners that only applied in Washington, D.C., that did not apply to all slave owners in the country. All right.
Okay, and we're just gonna finish the
Go ahead.
quote, and then you can respond as well. So I used that number to come up with $4.9 trillion adjusted for inflation.
The mistake he's making is he thinks that applied to all of the African slaves in this country. It did not. That only applied to Washington, D.C. Go to the Zen Education Project, read the information they have on the Compensated Emancipation Act, archives.gov has it, etc. So this is why we really have to understand what it is that we're talking about. Because I hear people thinking that applied to all the slaves in the U.S. and all the slave owners. No, it did not. That was only for Washington, D.C., and that was in 1862 during the U.S. Civil War.
Okay, very interesting. Y'all teaching me here, and I'm enjoying the conversation.
I've been studying history 33 years. Google my name, visit my website, theAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. There's a reason why I'm in 7 documentaries.
Okay, well, I think also maybe and just to play devil's advocate, they perhaps do know it only applies to D.C., but are still using. Don't. Okay, so
most people don't.
If they did not, then we're definitely glad that you have highlighted that. But if they do, I think just the number he's trying to come up with is based on one example. You disagree with that?
Most people don't know it only applies to Washington, D.C., okay? And the other thing is a lot of people confuse what Great Britain did in 1834 with the Slave Abolition Act, when they abolished slavery and they paid reparations to 46,000 British slave owners, and they took out a loan for about 19 million pounds, and that was for the 800,000 enslaved Africans. Okay, a lot of people can confuse what Great Britain did with what the U.S. did.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Keeping us on our toes and keeping us accurate. I appreciate you, Mr. Michael M. Hotep. We're going to go next to, let's bring up Oil King. I saw this quote, just give me housing. I think we were talking about housing, sir. This quote was used then, and he said, don't call it reparations. We have plenty of housing programs. So he said he doesn't need the title reparations, although it could be used to make Black people whole. I know you went kind of in depth with that. Do you think that is one of the, I guess, most reasonable or possibly, which I say, you use the word resistance, probably would be least resisted means of providing Black people?
Coming from the federal government, part of it. See, we have to have comprehensive repairing of the damage. It's not going to be just one thing. It's not going to be just one deal. Okay, so home ownership, and not just home ownership, free property taxes. Because see, there's a history of African Americans having their property taxes over assessed, and then we lose our home when we can't pay the property taxes. This is one of the ways our land has been stolen from us. Over assessing property taxes, the heirs' property rights. When it comes to a loophole, when it comes to land ownership, and this is one of the ways that a lot of African American farmers have lost their land with the heirs property loophole. Which is say for instance, say if 10 grandchildren inherit land, okay, from their grandfather or grandparents, and then one of them sells the land to a speculator, part of their land to a speculator, then there's a loophole that allows them somehow to be able to take over the rest of that land. This is heirs property. All right. When you study this, we've lost millions of acres of land through that. So it can be part of a comprehensive repairing of the damage. But this is why you first have to understand what happened to us. And one of the mistakes we make is we try to start studying our history in slavery. As a historian and as a student of Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, I have to say, when we talk about repairing the damage and making us whole again, we first have to understand who African people were and what African people had before we were put into an institution of slavery that stripped us of our history, names, culture, spiritual systems, folklore, mores, nationalities, things of this nature, and put us into an institution that put us into the category of chattel. You can't start studying our history in slavery because you missed the thousands of years of history prior to that. So when we talk about repairing the damage, I want to be restored to the level that my ancestors had prior to slavery, not get a check because they didn't get paid during slavery. This is a totally different concept.
That conceptually, I've never heard reparations placed as in what we would have
I'm trying to tell you, we have to refashion how we think about repairing the damage. You first have to analyze the damage that was done.
It's very deep. I love this question. We got to take a quick break after this. But
there.
Lana L says, does the
Pause
African
there,
History Network have...
And somebody asked the question, does the African History Network have classes on reparations? I teach history classes Saturday and Sunday. Visit my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for those classes. Okay, when we come back from the break, because they're playing the music again, we're going to look briefly here at this executive summary, and it lays out 12 harms that were inflicted upon African Americans as well. And I'll give you the link for the full 500-page report. We should be forming study groups in our communities. Everybody's talking about reparations, but very few people are studying the history that happened to us that require reparations. We should be forming study groups in our communities based upon this 500-page report. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Okay, back from break in 4 minutes. I gotta fly through this information when we come back. Jeez, this time went by quickly. Back from break in 3 minutes. All right, we got Strawberry watching, Dreadson, Kenya, Randall, Fly Girl. Okay, Sharon said he did a great job in Amistad. Fly Girl said black men in those movies are always shown as a support role for the white hero. She said this is why they don't want to have in Florida schools Black history, because it shows Black heroes and powerful images of Black people. Strawberry said, teach Michael. All right, you can post your comments here. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Back from break in 2 minutes. Also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App, through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Back from break in 2 minutes.
The facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotel. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We do recurring events and history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on.
This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy to electrify consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show. Okay, let's look very quickly here at this executive summary. And you can, if you go to, let's pull this up from the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta, Attorney General, Reparations Report. This is at oag.ca.gov, oag.ca.gov, Office of the Attorney General, Reparations Report. They have the link there to the full 500-page report and the executive summary, full interim report, executive summary, key findings, preliminary recommendations. Okay, so you can check that out and you can read it in its entirety. Let's look quickly here at the executive summary. Let's pull this up and okay. And let me increase the size of this here. So a couple of things I want to highlight here. So thoroughly have the effects of slavery infected every aspect of American society over the last 400 years that it's nearly impossible to identify every, quote, badge and incident of slavery, end quote, to include every piece of evidence or describe every harm done to African Americans. In order to address this practical reality, this interim report of the Reparations Task Force, the California Reparations Task Force, describes a sample of government actions and the compounding harms that have resulted, organized into 12 specific areas of systemic discrimination, organized into 12 specific areas of systemic discrimination. In order to maintain slavery, government actors adopted white supremacist beliefs and passed laws to create a racial hierarchy and to control both enslaved and free African Americans. Okay, so let's zip through that. And okay, let's see. I want to look at the first systemic harm is enslavement. Nationally, the foundation of America's wealth was built upon trafficked African peoples and their descendants, but by their forced labor and their bodies, built by their forced labor and their bodies as they were bought and sold as commodities. American government at all levels allowed or participated in exploiting, abusing, terrorizing, and murdering people of African descent so that mostly white Americans could profit from their enslavement. Okay, so they talk about after the American Revolutionary War, and then enslavers made more than $159 million between 1820 and 1860 by trafficking Africans within the U.S. Charles Ball, an enslaved man who was bought by slave traffickers in Maryland and forced to march to South Carolina, later remembered, quote, "I seriously meditated on self-destruction and had I been at liberty to get a rope, I believe I should have hanged myself at Lancaster. I had now no hope of ever again seeing my wife and children or revisiting the scenes of my youth," end quote. Okay, so, that's page 6. Now they go, let's see here. Let me reduce the size of this. And all right, so the second harm is enslavement. Well, actually, it's the first harm, enslavement. Then we have, they talk about slave codes were reborn as the black codes, and then as the Jim Crow laws segregating black and white Americans in every aspect of life. They talk about California in 1850. Okay, despite California entering the Union in 1850 as a free state, its early state government supported slavery. Its early state government supported slavery. Pro-slavery white Southerners held a great deal of power in the state legislature, the court system and among California's representatives in the U.S. Congress. And we know under their first governor, who was Peter Burnett, who previously was the governor of Oregon, we know that California tried to ban all free African Americans as well. Okay, that's like 1849, 1850. In 1852, California passed and enforced a fugitive slave law that was harsher than the federal fugitive slave law. And this made California a more pro-slavery state than most other free states, not because they own slaves, but because of they're saying because of the fugitive slave law that they enforced. California also outlawed non-white people from testifying in any court case involving white people. California also tried to ban free African Americans as well. California did not ratify the 14th Amendment until 1959, which protected the equal rights of all citizens, and the 15th Amendment, which prohibited states from denying a person's right to vote on the basis of race until 1962. The 15th Amendment of 1870, okay? 15th Amendment of February 1870. So the next harm that they lay out is racial terror. After slavery, white Americans frequently aided by the government maintained the badges of slavery by carrying out violence and intimidation against African Americans. And then let's see here. Let's see. I want to try to deal with things specific to California as well. Okay, so they talk about racial terror. Then let me scroll down here. California supported when they talk about California, supported by their government, ordinary citizens also terrorized and murdered Black Californians. The Ku Klux Klan established local chapters all over the state of California in the 1920s. During that time, California sometimes even held more KKK events than Mississippi or Louisiana. Many of California's KKK members were prominent individuals who held positions in civil leadership and police departments. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. You can visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Register for the online history classes that I teach. Also, you can support us as well through Cash App and PayPal. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace. Okay, stand by. Let's continue here. Let me go back to this here. All right. Let's go back to this. Okay, so during the 1920s, during that time, the 1920s, California sometimes even held more Ku Klux Klan events than Mississippi or Louisiana. Many of California's KKK members were prominent individuals who held positions in civil leadership and police departments. For example, in the 1920s, in Los Angeles, in the 1920s, prominent and numerous city government officials were KKK members or had ties to the Ku Klux Klan, including the mayor, district attorneys, and police officers, Violence against African Americans peaked in the 1940s as more African American Californians tried to buy homes in white neighborhoods. Today, police violence against and extrajudicial killings of African Americans occur in California in the same manner as they do in the rest of the country. Okay, so now next they talk about political disenfranchisement. This is another systemic harm. It's not just slavery, talking about repairing the damage. You have to first analyze what happened to us and the laws and policies that were put in place to inflict the damage in the first place, to know what it is that you are repairing. Just issuing a check don't deal with all that damage that was inflicted upon us. And many of those laws and policies are still in place right now. You have to correct those laws and policies that are continuing to inflict the harm. That's part of repairing the damage. This is why we have to have comprehensive reparations. The whole concept of reparations, the root concept is to repair, to make you whole again, to restore you to a point prior to being harmed. This is why you have to understand the history of what actually happened, so you know what it is that you're trying to repair. Political disenfranchisement. Nationally, African Americans have pursued equal political participation since before the Civil War, which started in 1861, April 12, 1861. But the federal, state, and local governments of the United States have suppressed and continue to suppress African American votes and political power. After the Civil War, the United States protected the voting rights of African Americans on paper, but not in reality. During the 12-year period after the Civil War, called Reconstruction, which is 1865 to 1877, the federal government tried to give newly freed African Americans access to basic civil rights. And by 1868, more than 700,000 Black men were registered to vote in the South. During Reconstruction, over 1,400 African Americans held federal, state, or local office, and more than 600 served in state assemblies. And you're going to have about 20 in Congress, and you're going to have 2 in the U.S. Senate. However, that progress was short-lived. You ain't lying. It was short-lived. There was a huge backlash against this progress we were making. During the contested presidential election of 1876 between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel J. Tilden, Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel J. Tilden, Republicans and Democrats agreed to withdraw federal troops from key locations in the South. It was South Carolina, Florida, and there were only 3 states that the Union troops were still in, okay, at that point in 1876. It was South Carolina, Florida, and I think it was Georgia was the 3rd state. Southern states then willfully ignored the voting protections in the U.S. Constitution, the 15th Amendment, and passed literacy tests, poll taxes, challenger laws, grandfather clauses, and other devices to prevent African Americans from voting. So 1889, Florida was the first state to have poll taxes, 1889, which was a tax you had to pay to register to vote. Then 1890, the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 imposed poll taxes and literacy tests. And what they did at the Mississippi State Convention became known as the Mississippi Plan, which was the model that was used by other Southern states to suppress the African American vote. And what Mississippi did was at a time when we were the majority of the voters in Mississippi. We were the majority of the citizens and the majority of the voters in Mississippi at this time in 1890. When you go back and look at Florida, when Florida wrote their state constitution in 1868 during Reconstruction, Florida imposed a felony disenfranchisement law in their 1868 state constitution. They were trying to suppress the African American vote because they feared what they called a Negro legislature, because we made up 48% of the Florida population in 1868 as a result of slavery. And they feared us voting other Black people into office and taking political power away from them. And they didn't want to live under African American rule or anything like that. The Brennan Center for Justice has this piece here. Let me see. Where is that? Florida. There's a piece from the Brennan Center for Justice, and I was looking at it earlier today. where is this? Because this gets deep into the history of Florida. So if you understand Florida's history, then you understand what's going on right now. Florida has a deep, deep history of racism. Don't expect reparations coming from Florida. I'm just telling you right now. Where is that? I just saw the Florida. And it's from the Brennan Center for Justice also. I'm going to see if I could try to pull up. Where the hell is that? Let's see if I could try to pull it up here on a computer. I thought. Let's see. It is. I think it's Florida. Yeah, this right here. Florida Rights, History of Florida's Felony Disenfranchisement Provision. This is it right here. I'm going to post the link here on the thread. It's a PDF. This is from the Brennan Center for Justice. This is why I've said numerous times, and I will continue to say, we have to stop telling African Americans to exercise their right to vote. You don't vote for exercise, you vote for power. Because Republicans are trying to suppress our vote because they fear us having political power and using political power. We have to be very direct. We have to be very precise in what it is that we're talking about. You don't vote for exercise. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You vote for power. You vote for laws and policies that are beneficial to you, your community, your people, and you wield your political power to bring into existence those policies that you want and to vote people out of office who are doing you harm. Okay. Now, this is from the Brennan Center for Justice, Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, History of Florida's Felony Disenfranchisement Provision. And what they did in 1868, Florida expanded their criminal disenfranchisement law, and they expanded the number of crimes that would result in felony convictions, and they did this to target African Americans. Blacks were disproportionately disenfranchised under the new provision because state policies at the time were designed to control newly freed slaves through the criminal justice system. Felony disenfranchisement in the 1868 Constitution was part of a larger effort to prevent a Negro legislature. Post-emancipation, legislators in Florida feared that freedmen, that means Black freedmen, former slaves, they feared that freedmen, who then constituted 48% of the state's population, would take over state and local government. The 1868 Florida State Constitution contained several provisions to prevent this from happening. For example, it established a state legislative apportionment scheme that inflated the representation of predominantly white counties while deflating the representation of predominantly Black counties. It also gave the governor the power to appoint local officials, thereby preventing local Black majorities from electing their own leaders. One legislator wrote that this and other such provisions were designed to quote, prevent a Negro legislature. Felony disenfranchisement was yet another mechanism intended to suppress political power of newly freed slaves. This is why there was so much resistance from the Republican-dominated state legislature when voters voted to remove the felony disenfranchisement laws in Florida and restore full voting rights to ex-offenders, including white ex-offenders. Florida's expansion of criminal disenfranchisement during Reconstruction reflected a regional and even nationwide trend. Okay, so read this. This is from the Brennan Center for Justice, History of Florida's Felony Disenfranchisement Provision. All right, now, Let's go back to the executive summary. Then I got to get out of here. We'll try to squeeze in the Harriet Tubman story. Then I've got to go. I don't want that. I want this one here. Let's go back to the executive summary. Okay. States also barred African Americans from serving on jury. So we're at the California Reparations Task Force again. Okay. This is page, what page is this? I think it's seven, page 8. Page 8. Political disenfranchisement. All right. Now, when we look at, they should have information here on California. Okay, to talk about the GI Bill, historians have argued that Southern lawmakers ensured that Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, commonly called the GI Bill, was administered by states instead of the federal government to guarantee that states could direct its fund to white veterans. You talked about that on last Sunday's show. Similarly, in order to secure the support of white Southern lawmakers, Congress included segregation clauses or rejected anti-discrimination clauses in the Hospital Survey and Reconstruction Act of 1946, commonly known as the Hill-Burton Act. Okay, now if we look at, you can read the rest of that. If we look at California, when it comes to voter disenfranchisement, California also passed and enforced laws to prevent Black Californians from accumulating political power. California passed a law prohibiting non-white witnesses from testifying against white Californians. Okay, California passed a law prohibiting non-white witnesses from testifying against white Californians. This law shielded white defendants from justice. The California Supreme Court explained that any non-white person the California Supreme Court explained that any non-white person to testify, quote, would admit them to all the equal rights of citizenship, and we might soon see them at the polls, P-O-L-L-S, the voter polls, in the jury box, upon the bench, and in our legislative halls, end quote. A prospect that the court viewed as an actual and present danger. They didn't fear us exercising, they feared us having political power and using it and sitting on juries, determining white people's fate when it came to jury trials, things of this nature. So it was rampant voter suppression that took place and trying to disenfranchise us from exercising those rights, having those rights. California, in sitting on juries, etc. California did not allow Black men to vote until 1879. Okay. Now, the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, which guaranteed the right to vote for African American men. California did not allow Black men to vote until 1879, 9 years after that. The state also passed many of the voter suppression laws that were used in the South. California prohibited individuals convicted of felonies from voting, just like Florida did. And in Florida, that goes back to 1868. California added a poll tax and put in place a literacy test as well. So when you think about poll taxes and literacy tests, you think about Alabama. You know, there's a documentary that's airing on MSNBC this weekend dealing with Lowndes County, Alabama, and the Lowndes County Freedom Party of 1965. You think of Alabama, you think of Mississippi, you think of Florida, Georgia, when you talk about poll taxes and literacy tests. You don't think about California, okay? You don't think about California, the gold rush, the 49ers, things like that. No, California was doing it's like the California was like the south of the West Coast. It was like the south of the West Coast. Okay, housing segregation. We'll leave it here. We'll pick this up next week. We'll continue next week. Housing segregation. Nationally, America's racial hierarchy was the foundation for a system of segregation in the United States after the Civil War. The aim of segregation was not only to separate, but also to force African Americans to live in worse conditions in nearly every aspect of life. Now, some of us who don't understand history try to romanticize segregation, and they only look at, say, like Black Wall Street. Okay, and they had like 27 millionaires and 600 businesses, things like this. They don't talk about the poor people who lived in Black Wall Street. They don't deal with that because there were poor people that lived there. Everybody didn't own businesses. You had people who were domestics that worked for white people in South Tulsa. Okay, and so a lot of times we try to romanticize segregation, and we don't talk about being segregated out of opportunity, locked out of bank loans to go to college, or being able to take advantage of the GI Bill. We don't look at the totality of segregation, as well as the brutality and the domestic terrorism that was used to enforce segregation. We were being segregated out of opportunities. It wasn't about being able to live next door to white people or be with white people. It's being able to have first-class citizenship and be able to take full advantage of all of your rights that our taxpayer dollars are paying for. So too often we romanticize segregation. The aim of segregation was not only to separate, but also to force African Americans to live in worse conditions in nearly every aspect of life. Government actors working with private individuals actively segregated America into Black and white neighborhoods. Then they're going to run the expressways through our neighborhoods, destroying homes and businesses. Although this system of segregation was called Jim Crow in the South, it existed by less obvious but effective means throughout the entire country, including in California. During enslavement, about 90% of African Americans were forced to live in the South. Immediately after the Civil War, the country was racially and geographically configured in ways that were different from the way it was segregated today. And throughout the 20th century, American federal, state, and local municipal governments expanded and solidified segregation efforts through zoning ordinances, slum clearance policies, construction of parks and freeways through the Black neighborhoods, and public housing sitting decisions. Courts enforced racial covenants that prevented homes from being sold to African Americans well into the 1940s. Okay, restrictive covenants where it was written into the deeds that the home could not be sold to non-white people. The federal government used redlining to deny African Americans equal access to capital needed to buy a single-family home, while at the same time subsidizing white Americans' efforts to own the same type of home. As President Herbert Hoover stated in 1931, single-family homes were, quote, expressions of racial longing. Single-family homes were expressions of racial longing, and that our people should live in their own homes is a sentiment deep in the heart of our race, end quote. Now, the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968 outlawed housing discrimination, but did not fix the structures put in place by 100 years of discriminatory government policies, and residential segregation continues today. Residential segregation continues today. The average urban Black person in 1890 lived in a neighborhood that was only 27% Black. In 2019, America is as segregated as it was in the 1940s, with the average urban Black person living in a neighborhood that is 44% Black. better jobs, tax dollars, municipal services, healthy environments, good schools, access to health care, and grocery stores have followed white residents to the suburbs, leaving concentrated poverty, underfunded schools, collapsing infrastructure, polluted water and air, crime, and food deserts in segregated inner city neighborhoods. Now, in California, the federal, state, and local government created segregation through redlining, zoning ordinances, decisions on where to build schools and highways, and discriminatory federal mortgage policies. California's sundown towns, which was a term derived from municipal signs announcing that African Americans must leave by dusk. These are sundown towns. So if you were still in that town, there's one, sundown towns were towns where African Americans were not allowed to live. Two, you may work there in the daytime, but by nightfall, you better be out of that town, because you can be stopped, arrested, beaten up, killed. Okay, these are sundown towns. Like most of the suburbs of Los Angeles and San Francisco, these sundown towns prohibited African Americans from living in entire cities throughout the state of California. The federal government financed many whites-only neighborhoods throughout the state of California. The Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation, the HOLC, the Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation, which was created by the federal government around 1933. Their maps used in redlining describe many Californian neighborhoods in racially discriminatory terms. For example, in San Diego, there were quote unquote servants areas of La Jolla, Jolla, and several areas that were restricted to the Caucasian race, quote unquote, restricted to the Caucasian race. Now, during World War II, the federal government paid to build segregated housing for defense workers in Northern California. Housing for white workers, generally better constructed and permanent, while white workers lived in rooms paid for by the federal government. Black wartime workers lived in cardboard shacks, barns, tents, or open fields. Okay, now share that with people that want to tell us to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. White people have had help from the federal government basically since they got here. Okay, when they were giving away free acres of land for every white person that came here, like in the 1600s going into the 1700s, and then you got additional acres of land for every slave that you own. These were called head rights, the Head Rights Act. Now, racially restrictive covenants, which were clauses in property deeds that usually allowed only white residents to live on the property, on the property described in the deed, were commonplace in California courts, and California courts enforced them well into the 1940s. These are racially restrictive covenants. Numerous neighborhoods around the state of California rezoned black neighborhoods. See if we can zoom in on this. Numerous neighborhoods around the state rezoned black neighborhoods for industrial use to steer white residents towards better neighborhoods, or adopted zoning ordinances to ban apartment buildings to try and keep out prospective black residents. State agencies demolished thriving African-American neighborhoods in the name of urban renewal and park construction. Operating under state law for urban development, the city of San Francisco declared the Western Addition blighted and destroyed the Fillmore, which was San Francisco's most prominent Black neighborhood and business district. In doing so, the city of San Francisco closed 883 businesses, displaced 4,729 households, destroyed 2,500 Victorian homes, and damaged the lives of nearly 20,000 people. And almost all of them were African American. The city then left the land empty for many years. Okay, so read the rest of this. That's on page this page 9, 8. That's page 10. Okay, we'll pick this up next week. This is the executive summary of the 500-page interim report from the California Reparations Task Force, which deals with the history, last about 150 years of history and what has happened to African Americans. And it outlines 12 areas of harm dealing with systemic racism and discrimination. That is the damage that has to be repaired. That is the damage that has to be repaired. To understand reparations and repairing the damage of 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining, housing discrimination, segregation when it comes to schooling, being discriminated against, getting loans, etc. You have to analyze what happened to us, the laws and policies put in place to inflict the harm, so you understand what has to be repaired, and you have to correct those laws and policies that are still in place, inflicting harm to us as well. We have to have comprehensive reparations. Cash payments can be part of comprehensive reparations, but cash payments alone does not repair the damage that was done to us. That's why it's important to read that report, because that's the most comprehensive study on African Americans since the 1968 Kerner Commission report from the Lyndon Baines Johnson administration. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever.